All right, good evening, everyone. It's good to be back. Hopefully, everything is up and running. We'll check to make sure everything is good because it's been a couple of weeks. We have a lot to talk about since we last chatted. The last time we were on was the third week of January, and around that time, we were moving into our tranquil weather pattern. We've been talking about that. It's been well documented, and it is pretty much
running.
whoops, pretty much just paid out. Okay. All right. Good. Well, that was fun. All right. So anyway, everything's pretty much panned out as expected so far. And now we're moving back into our storming pattern. Now, as I promised, we'd go back and we take a look at our winter forecast. I'm going to go back and look at what was expected back in October, where we're at right now, and of course go over the actual details. And one of the things I made sure to do this year that I thought was really important because there's been a lot of discussion of people putting out winter forecasts, but then if the winter forecast pans out or it doesn't, the forecast disappears. So this year, I decided that I was going to keep that forecast in place throughout the entire winter on the public site and on the premium site. The premium site, of course, has more detailed information and more thoughts on the mechanical going on with the forecast. So we start off with that, and then of course we're going to talk about our evolving weather pattern, the changes that we're starting to see, and also, because I know everyone's been watching it, the actual forecast for our potential winter storm, what can be expected, what I'm looking at, and what's reasonable to expect moving forward. The meeting was outstanding. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great information sent out there. And of course, I'm going to, after I get done going over everything, I am going to answer all your questions on the premium chat, and then we'll visit YouTube and see if we have anything interesting on X. So let's begin. It's been a couple of weeks, so let's see. Hopefully everything works out just fine, and it does. Okay, so just to recap once again, this was the winter forecast that we put out in October, and the idea was that we'd be in the battle zone for the storms. A lot of your precipitation was going to be focused to the south of this area, and so we've seen below normal snowfall in locations like the Green and White Mountains. We've also had plenty of storms trek up in this location, but for the most part, a lot of your heavier precipitation, which in some cases is rain, has been focused over the northern Mid-Atlantic and back through the Tennessee River Valley. We've had some rather chilly conditions down here in the southeast with plenty of precipitation. Of course, the northern plains has been featuring above normal temperatures with below normal precipitation, so that's pretty much worked out as expected. And the forecast, because again, we were in region 5, just a show right here for the most part, and then the Poconos and the Catskills was in region 2. But just to be clear, in this region, the potential for interaction between the polar and subtropical jet streams would be highest, which it has been. Much like other regions, the warmest temperatures will be in December, the coldest in February. We'll see about February. Okay, that's going to be a bit of a question mark, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. With the highest threat for winter storms from mid-January, which we saw, through early March, which, as you have probably been seeing recently on many social media accounts, other meteorologists, other let's just say weather enthusiasts out there have also been noticing the changes that are evolving will likely lead to the potential for winter storms until early March, maybe even mid-March for the higher elevations. While there is a temptation to call for above normal snowfall in these locations, the state of the polar and Arctic air masses, which has been an issue all winter, as described, would suggest a mix of snow, ice, and rainstorms this winter that could lead to some locations with well above average snowfall by the time this is all over, and others below normal based on impacts on one or two winter storms. So that was the forecast going in. And so far, I would say for the most part, that's pretty much what we've been seeing. Feel free to read the rest of the forecast at your leisure. I know that not everyone has come to this video to go and look at the entire video, but the entire forecast. But one of the key things that would set up a significant storm threat, a prolonged period of storm threat, would be a negative EPO, positive PNA, and west-based negative NAO. And I'm pointing that out because that is the pattern that we are going in. Now, when you have that type of configuration, it doesn't guarantee you're going to get a ton of snow. But it certainly is a heck of a lot better than what we've been dealing with, which would basically be a positive EPO, negative PNA, and positive NAO, which is what we've been in the past 2 weeks. So that's where we've been for this winter. Okay, very stormy, very active. Some people have gotten the snow they wanted. Others clearly have not. Based on the emails I've gotten, some people really I just feel like they just want the ice age. Because I literally had someone dropping an email to me complaining that average highs are not in the upper 20s to lower 30s. In which I responded, sir, what you want to do is move up to Syracuse or perhaps the Arctic Circle, because the last time our average high temperatures were that cold in January and February was the little ice age, which is why I blame Dickens for everyone thinking that it should snow on Christmas. So that's where we are right now with the winter forecast. We'll see how it plays out in February, and we'll go over in early March how February looked and whether or not those ideas worked out. But for the most part, what I wrote there, again, I haven't changed this. I left this alone since mid-October. And the reason why I want to show this is that I want to keep myself honest in terms of the only way that I'm going to improve is by going over the forecast with you live here, looking at my errors, looking at my improvements, seeing what I need to fix, and become a better meteorologist. And that is what every meteorologist should do. If you are interested in meteorology, the first thing you have to do is swallow your pride. Okay, swallow your ego and go over your mistakes and admit them. And when you do that, that's how you become a better scientist. This is true no matter what you decide to do. All right, whether you become a scientist or an athlete, embrace your failures, learn from them, and be very transparent. And that's how you become a better person overall, in my opinion. So that's what we were looking at. Again, we'll see how February works out and whether or not everyone is very happy or very upset. I can't control the weather, but at the very least, I kind of have the idea of where it should be going. Now, back to what is happening right now. We'll start with the tropical forcing because a lot of people have been keeping an eye on the MJO and whatnot. And as I'd said about a couple of weeks ago, with the SOI going into a positive state, we're going to be pretty quiet. And we certainly have been. But since then, we've seen some changes. Now, some interesting points I want to bring up with the SOI in relationship to El Nino. Excuse me. El Nino is being called a super El Nino by the CPC because of the sea surface temperatures. This is not in any way, shape, or form a signal of a super El Nino. And this is where it gets really, really complicated in that we run around and we have a lot of these terms, right? And ways of looking at the atmosphere. And if you want to just have one narrative, then you can look at one term and one idea, and you could just look at the sea surface temperatures and then just call it a super El Nino. But if you're forecasting, if you're doing operational forecasting, you cannot do that. You have to look at everything because the atmosphere is a four-dimensional box. So you have to think in four-dimensional ways. So when you're thinking of four-dimensional ways, you can't just look at, well, these are the temperature anomalies and that's it. You have to look at the orientation of the temperature anomalies. what's surrounding those temperature anomalies, and then what is the forcing parameters from those temperature anomalies that would enhance convection and create the latent heat release in the atmosphere to disrupt and change the jet streams that we are dealing with. In this case, the subtropical and the polar jet stream, right? One of the ways to kind of study that is to look at the SOI. Now, the SOI is the difference in pressure, okay, around the tropical Pacific. And if you want to learn more about the SOI, you can go right here. We'll pull that up. See if this loads pretty fast. So just so you understand what the SOI is, I want to read it specifically, okay? The Southern Oscillation Index, or SOI, is a standardized index of the barometric pressure over Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Now, the reason why measuring these pressures are very important is to understand the way that the atmosphere is reacting to these thermal gradients. Like, here's the key thing. This is why I'm bringing this up, okay? Climate scientists use the SOI to assess the strength of the El Nino Southern Oscillation phenomenon for nearly 25% of our year-to-year variable rain. It impacts the rain, so on and so forth. For example, it is often wetter during La Nina classification. Again, this is for Australia, so classification year, when the SOI is very positive, higher than +7, and drier during El Nino when the SOI is very negative, lower than -7. So in Australia, they kind of have it reversed than what we have in the eastern United States. With La Nina, we're kind of dry in the southeast and mid-Atlantic because of the southeast ridge. In Australia, it's wet, and then reverse. But note the signals in the SOI. La Nina, plus. El Nino, negative. Now, why am I bringing that up? This is no super El Nino. This is an El Nino that has been, well, +7. That's La Nina. So why am I bringing this up? But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the atmosphere is reacting in such a way that is not typical of a super El Nino. It's more typical of a weak El Nino. And the reason why that is important, and the reason why I am pointing that out now, is because it gives us a better idea of what we're going to be dealing with for the rest of February and into March, and how this is going to interact with what is happening in the stratosphere and what is starting to evolve in the polar and subtropical jet streams. Because we now see this continuation of this negative state. And with our daily values have been -41, -39, that's pretty damn negative. So that's a huge change. So we know that there's going to be a change in the atmosphere. Now we're seeing the monthly values and the seasonal values begin to decline again. Weak, but still present. Combine all that with the MJO. Now, the MJO is a smaller wave. It's a shorter wavelength in the atmosphere that influences convection. So you have your large wavelength and your shorter wavelength, okay? Now, as I said before, when the MJO is in alignment with El Nino, the wavelengths are enhanced, okay? So think about radio waves. When the radio waves are fighting against each other, they disrupt each other. You get a lot of static. When they're in alignment, beautiful music. Phase 8 is what you want to look for beautiful music if you're a winter weather lover in the eastern United States. And so we're seeing the MJO forecast suggesting in the CFS going into phase 8 in a neutral state, the European going into phase 8 in a neutral state, another European model with more of a climate twist to it, going into phase 8 in a neutral state. And of course, our long-range guidance is also doing the same thing. Now, When it goes into this neutral circle, basically El Nino is dominant. Okay? So whenever you have a neutral state, you revert back to whatever is going on in ENSO. So if it's La Nina, then it's a La Nina state. If it's El Nino, then it's an El Nino state. So the enhancement happens around the middle of the month, which when you consider lag time for influence over North America, that is basically the second half of February. So that's your tropical forcing. And if you are curious as to whether or not that tropical forcing is actually panning out compared to the Malagines, very easy way to check this out. And you can use observations. This is the infrared satellite picture, basically from yesterday. Well, actually, even updated for this morning. And the key thing to watch is convection that's starting to fire around the dateline again. This was completely silent last week. Now you're starting to see it fire up, which tells me that the forecast ideas in the Malagines is starting to pan out. So now we have a bigger picture of what's evolving here. Then we look at the stratosphere. QBO still east. Why is that important? When the QBO is east, when we have an easterly component, that increases your potential for interruption in the polar vortex. So it supports the idea of a polar vortex stretching, possibly a reversal of the winds. I won't put this out now because next year QBO is going to be probably westerly. And when the QBO is westerly, well, it makes the potential for high latitude blocking very, very difficult. So we're in a favorable state with this. Latest European guidance that just came out this afternoon is very strongly suggesting a reversal of the winds. I'm still a little skeptical to see whether or not we get a full split, but there is very strong support right now for a full split. But let's just say that it just goes into this weak state above the zero line. As long as we have severe weakening of the polar vortex for the rest of February all the way into March, it's going to be a cold start to the spring. It's going to be a stormy end to the winter. That is pretty much all locked in. So that's all playing out. So what does this mean for our teleconnections? Well, remember what I said back in the winter forecast. When we have a negative EPO, a negative northern oscillation, and a positive PNA, ridge in the west, beware, because that's when we're going to have our best potential for stormy weather. So what is the forecast going in? Negative EPO, negative NAO, and a positive PNA pattern showing up after the 12th. You have your configuration. Now the question simply is, do the shortwaves interact? How do they interact? What is the timing? Do they work together, or is one faster than the other? When does the cold air come in? Which, remember, cold air is still going to be an issue here, okay? In terms of, I've not been, and I said this back in October, and I'm saying it now, I have not been impressed with the potential of, with the nature of these polar and Arctic air masses when it comes to interacting with the subtropical jet stream, which is typical of El Nino. These are going to be polar air masses that support more 10-to-1 ratios, 8-to-1 ratios, a lot of sleet, a lot of rain mixing in, that type of stuff. Not easy forecast for me when we get these storm threats. So we'll see how that plays out. But once again, we are going into a period where we have the best potential that we've seen in 4 years. The last time I said that, we had 2 winter storms, and one which produced moderate snowfall to the north of the I-95 corridor, and one that supported moderate snowfall basically around the northern Mid-Atlantic, around the I-95 corridor, especially for the Philadelphia metro and southern New Jersey and parts of central New Jersey. New York City, I know you guys missed out. Long Island, God, people from Long Island have been sending me emails constantly complaining about the fact they've seen a lack of snow, like as if I control it. Trust me, if I can control it, I would. But so far, you guys missed out. So far. We'll see if that continues. So that's where we are right now, and this is how that looks on the European and the European ensembles. The GFS was having some issues coming in, but essentially this is the pattern we start to move towards by the middle of February. And right around my wife's birthday, so she's going to be rather ticked off about that if we get any storms. But like I said, she doesn't blame me for if we have snow on her birthday because I don't control it.
It's not your fault. It's my fault for being born then.
No. See, the thing is that you're born around the President's Day winter storm, which is a very important.
The damn blizzard to begin with.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great sign. We were meant to be. That's pretty much what it comes down to. But you could see the potential here we have in this pattern. Now, if I wanted to be a little bit more of a pain in the ass and really dive into whether this is a perfect pattern or not, okay, that ridge out here, I would have preferred it to be out here. So we'll see whether or not this ridge remains this far to the west. Because with the ridge this far to the west, it makes for a broader trough, and you can make some cases for more of a southerly track to the storms, and maybe a miss for New England, which wouldn't be too far off from my winter forecast. But still, I need you guys to stop, complaining and saying that winter's canceled. So it would be good if there was like a good 20-inch snowfall over there. But I like the negative NAO setup here. I would like it to be a little bit further west, but not too bad. And then you have your subtropical jet stream. See if that interacts with the polar jet stream. You have your block, nice 50-50 low. So yeah, there's plenty of potential here. But I'm not guaranteeing anything. Because I'm not 10 and I'm not trying to make clicks for social media. So with that, let's talk about the pattern that we have evolving. And again, I'll answer all your questions. They sure are flying in there, so it should be interesting to see what we got here tonight. For right now, our chilly air mass that we've had over the past couple of days is getting set to leave. This ridge is going to be pushing out. We're going to get nice warm air transport. And if you want, a nice little preview of spring, you're going to get it over the next couple of days. And if you don't, I don't know what to tell you. Watch baseball. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But for the next couple of days, we're going to be warming up into the 40s, 50s, and yes, possibly even a few 60s by the time we get to Saturday before we start to cool down again, which sets up some issues for our next storm. Now, currently, the 250 millibar winds are starting to shift. Our Omega ridge that we've been under, now they call it Omega because it looks just like a Greek Omega. Those of you in college, you know all about that. But basically, it looks like a trough in the west, ridge over the central, trough in the east, right? So that is starting to break down now. As it breaks down, the ridge moves through, tranquil conditions continue, pleasant weather conditions all the way until about Sunday when the Chiefs win. Maybe. So we'll see how that works out, right? So in the meantime, this trough is going to start to get pushed east. And what you're going to start to get is this broad trough over the eastern United States and this ridge starting to build over the Rockies. So everything starts to shift, the block collapses, and that is when we start to get our storm set up. Now, when you have a change in the pattern and a blocking pattern starts to collapse like this, you typically start off that pattern change with a storm. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have 10 feet of snow in your backyard, but a storm nonetheless. And so that is what we're starting to evolve here, where the whole block is starting to collapse. This feature here is going to weaken as the support for all this lifting is going to basically disintegrate and a new broad trough is going to take hold. And the short wave that's diving here is going to be the key signal to change our pattern. Now, one of the things we were watching over the past couple of days was just how strong this short wave was going to be, because some guidance had this short wave very strong. And if it was going to be very strong, then it would interact with the polar jet stream faster and lead to a lake cutter. That idea is dead now. Literally no model guidance is showing that. And the reason why is because now we have real true sampling of this shortwave, and we have a better understanding of just how strong it is. So it's not going to interact with the polar jet stream in the plains. It's going to hold off a bit. Now we get to our questions. So, on the European guidance, takes our shortwave, which is right here by this point on Saturday night into Sunday morning, marches towards the Tennessee River Valley, and then starts to interact with the polar jet stream. And while it's doing that, it tries to pull the cold air in. The one thing I like about the European is that it's a little bit more realistic with this mild air mass. A lot of the models are trying to crash the cold air mass right into the coastal plain. And we've been in the 50s and 60s. It's going to be really hard to cool that boundary layer. So I would stay away from any guidance that has significant snowfall on the coastal plain right now. I do like, though, on Tuesday, a gradual changeover as the cold air is bleeding in. This is our storm that sets the stage, not the storm to bring the blockbuster. Okay, it's the trailer. Okay, it is the preview for the main story. So this sets up our pattern, and this swings on through. The GFS has a little bit of a different look. It keeps the shortwave a little bit more robust, and it has a little bit more of a funky interaction with the polar jet stream. So it tries to pull in the cold air a little bit faster on Tuesday. And also it's moving at a little bit of a different speed compared to the European. The European's a little bit faster. Previous runs were a little bit slower. So what does this all tell us? Okay. The models, whichever one you want to pick, is still having a trouble with the timing of the storm. That's probably going to be an issue until about Saturday. Okay. So we have that issue. At the same time, because it's having trouble timing with the storm, it's having trouble with the timing of the interaction of the polar air masses. So you end up with these two different looks. On the European, you get this robust storm with kind of a mix on the coast and heavy snow over the interior, changing over to snow on the coast. This is progged for, comes in Monday evening, continues on through Tuesday, exits Tuesday night. The European takes us in on Monday and has us moves through by Tuesday morning and out by Tuesday afternoon. So it's a difference of about 6 to 10 hours in timing. I never like to take the details this far out because then you just end up making a huge amount of mistakes. So what can we take from this? Well, we know it's a pattern change storm. We know that we have a warm air mass ahead of it and a cold air mass is coming in. So typically when I have that tells me coastal plain, hold on, not yet, not your storm yet, but this gets the cold air back in to play. So I would look at this as an interior storm, wintry mix. Lehigh Valley, maybe wintry mix, snow, rain changing over to sleet and snow. Snow and sleet for the Poconos and Catskills. Don't know how much yet, but that's generally my thinking. Snow ratio probably going to be below 10 based on the factors that we have here. Coastal plain, snow at the end. The timing, not sure yet. Still got to work that out because I got to still work out the shortwave timings. But I like this storm setting everything up because this storm sets up the high latitude blocking and gets us to our negative EPO, positive PNA, negative NAO pattern. This is not the storm to make the winter. Like I said back in October, this winter's pretty much going to, for people being happy about this winter, is probably going to come down to 1 or 2 storms. And that is essentially where we're setting up ourselves for the rest of February and early March. But this storm, to me, is screaming I-95, snow at the end, maybe some dusting here and there. Interior, more significant snowfall. because you're dealing with an environment where you have a low pressure system trying to pull cold air towards the coastal plain. And the one thing I never like forecasting for, unless I have really strong support under 90 hours, is the idea of cold air rushing into the coastal plain while a storm is intensifying. Can it happen? Absolutely. But even when that happens, you have to overcome so much in the boundary layer that, yeah, it'll snow, but will it actually stick? So I'll hold off those questions until we actually get under 90 hours. And let's say there's a signal of very strong omega values or strong ascent to cool the boundary layer significantly. But if I'm looking at this from where we are standing right now, I-95 is probably rain changing over to a little bit of snow at the end. And then the interior, that's where I like my accumulating snowfall. So that's where I see everything setting up right now. So with that, now I'm going to take all of your questions, which looks like there's plenty here on the live chat for the premium side. And holy God, wow, YouTube is just fired up. Look at that. All right, so I'm assuming X will probably have one or two questions as well. Let's see here. So we'll start off with card, as always. 70 millibar polar vortex, definitely showing weakening here. Hold it. Let me go back to this. 70 millibar polar vortex, definitely showing weakening, but the orientation right now is awfully needs to change more 90 degrees. Yes, the idea is that as the stretching evolves and as the EP flux continues to intensify, the stretching is going to be focused more towards North America. Now, the reason why I've been saying that polar air mass and Arctic air mass I'm not entirely impressed with is because I don't see right now the mother lode coming in towards our neck of the woods. I see us kind of on the edge and being the battleground between these Arctic air masses pushing south towards the Great Lakes, which will probably have another round of lake effect snow. And part of that is because I'm just not impressed with the evolution of the polar vortex to drop down towards us. We had that shot, and it ended up being cold and dry. Remember that it was like 20 degrees out, but it was dry. So in this case, I'm not seeing the support for the polar vortex to split towards us. I still don't buy the idea of the polar vortex splitting to begin with, but we'll see how that works out. But even with that, I still like the coldest air masses more focused towards central Canada, the northern plains, the Great Lakes, and we're kind of on the battleground edge. Prediction for when there is a major snowstorm in New York City Metro, model free, call February 17th and 18th. Why? The 2-stadium series at Giant Stadium, Flyers, Devils, and Rangers Islanders. Yeah, that'd be perfect. That'd be poetic if it happened right about that time. Let's see here. If snow materializes from mid-February to early March, will be classic El Nino backloaded winter. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been expecting. So we'll see how it works out. The one thing that makes me nervous is just the SOI. It's just been so unusual, God, this is like the third El Nino Southern Oscillation period, whether it's La Nina or El Nino, where the forcing mechanisms have not been behaving the way they should be. Part of that could be climate change. There's certainly a good debate about that with the nature of the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific being warm and our lack of cold water and that lack of gradient. Maybe that's an issue. But it's something that certainly has my attention. Because it has my attention not from any political nonsense or anything. But look, it has my attention because it impacts operational forecasting. So I got to figure it out. Because I got to figure out what's causing the SOI change. Because it's not behaving the way it should for a super El Nino. This SOI value should be down to like minus 20, not like 5. Okay, so it's annoying and we got to figure it out. Let's see here. I know there is a strong indication that there will be La Nina in the spring and summer. any indication that just like the tail part of the last one, this La Nina could have a more active subtropical jet than typical because high level water vapor, even with the water vapor being more spread out now. Okay, so part of that has to do with the volcanic eruption from about 3 years ago. That's certainly something that's in the back of my mind that we're studying. Um, I'm concerned about this La Nina when it happens in the summer, which looks like it has some pretty strong support. Premium members, I did a discussion about that on Tuesday night, where some of the data that we're looking at looks like it could be a nice little moderate La Nina setting up. I'm concerned about the La Nina because I do like the idea of a slightly more active subtropical gesture than what you're used to, with a significant stormy pattern by this summer in the plains and the Tennessee River Valley up towards the Great Lakes, leading to some pretty nasty severe weather setup. But I'm also concerned with the fact that the Atlantic is so warm and we have a La Nina taking place with reduced wind shear in the Atlantic. I'm getting a little concerned that not only could the hurricane season be more active, but the storms could be a bit concerning. So I'm just going to put that out there right now. This La Nina, combined with what we're seeing with various changes in the atmosphere, could line up to set up a rather active tropical weather season and an active severe season for the plains. For us, I'm a little concerned that we could be dealing with a couple more heat waves, which some people might actually enjoy, but we'll see how that plays out. So La Nina is going to be a bit of a challenge, that's for sure. So let's see some good questions from YouTube. And I got some good suggestions. I do plan on making some videos in the spring and summer about these different indices, kind of like as an educational thing. It's just a matter of building up some time to get it done. Let's see here. Let's see. I talked about the SOI. Oh, cool. Sailor from U.S., a retired U.S. Navy. That's awesome. Well, thank you, sir, for your service. Let's see here. Would you say it is more northerly track? It's more of, we don't have the block in yet for this storm. So it's kind of, you really need to thread the needle to get the storm track to be to basically moving over Delaware and to the south of New Jersey, like some guidance was showing. Is it possible still? Yes. But even with that, it still takes time to get the cold air down towards the coastal plain. So the overall idea is still the same. Let's see here. It's like Long Island will never see real snow again. Like the storms in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. The 80s really did not have a lot of storms. Check it out. We had some snow droughts in the 80s, especially the early 80s. It does have something to do with the Atlantic warming. That's certainly a factor because obviously if you have a warmer Atlantic, you have more boundary layer issues to contend with. But even with that said, if you remember back in the early 2010s and late 2000s, like from let's say 2009 to about 2015 or 16, there was all this discussion about how the above normal snowfall was because of climate change, which there was some factor to it because you had enhanced precipitable water values, right? But just because of global warming does not mean you cannot have impressive winter storms. We're in a drought, snow drought. It happens. It happened in the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1950s, parts of the 70s and early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Mid 90s were just off the hook. Don't even get me started on that. parts of the early 2000s. So, yeah, there's some years where we get like nothing. And then there's other years where we're like, no more, please, enough. We go through these cycles. This is totally normal. The idea that we get perpetual winter storms every year or that we will get heavy snow every year is just not reality. Same thing with the upper 20s to lower 30s highs idea. That's more like we should be more like in the 40s, which is what we have been in. But we're going to have some winters where we're going to be like, can we turn off the snow gun because we've had enough? Those winters will be coming back. It's just a matter of interaction and timing of these shortwaves. The difference between this winter being blockbuster and not is literally the difference of a couple of hours. Because the pattern has been here. The results, for some, not so much. Will we get a huge snowstorm? We could. The possibility's there. I have no idea whether we will. I mean, that's the truth. I could easily lie to you and make nice little pretty graphics I've seen on YouTube where like we have a massive storm. We'll get like a map of the United States. It'll be Arctic and we'll put icicles and major pattern change and blizzards everywhere. I've seen that. You don't come to me for that. If you want that, you can get some like guy out there storm chasing, whatever. You can put that stuff out there. I'm not going to tell you that because that's irresponsible. Okay? What I can tell you is that the pattern's favorable, but no guarantee. I don't think it will snow. Everything needs to be it will snow. But everything does need to be perfect. That's the thing that people need to understand about winter storms in the northern mid-Atlantic. This is why I love them. I love forecasting for them. Because everything does need to be perfect. It is the perfect combination. Think about where you live. You live in an environment where you have interactions between Pacific air masses, Arctic air masses, maritime air masses coming in from the Atlantic, tropical air masses coming from the Gulf of Mexico, tropical air masses coming in from the Bahamas. All these air masses interacting, two jet streams to interact with, one with the polar jet stream, one with the subtropical jet stream, and sometimes you even have the Arctic jet stream. So you got three different short waves to interact with, the timing of all these different blocks, and the orientation of each ridge and trough within each one of those jet stream couplings. Yeah, it is difficult. It's always been difficult. That's the wonder of winter storms, guys. The wonder of winter storms is that all those factors come into line to set up a snowstorm. When you get a massive snowstorm, understand what needs to be combined to have that happen in this part of the country, in this part of the world. You live in a part of the world where you have all those interactions. It's very unique. You don't see this in many other places around the world. So yeah, it is very difficult to get these different combinations where you have interactions with a ridge that enhances your cading factor, your cold air damming to lock cold air in, the interaction with the Atlantic Ocean to enhance that thermal gradient, that thermal gradient interacting to enhance cyclogenesis and low pressure development. I can go on for hours. Probably will. I drive my wife nuts about it. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that, yes, it is very difficult to get a winter storm here because you have all those factors interacting. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We could whip out some of these books here. We could whip out the Northeast Snowstorms. We'll take out the Dynamic Meteorology book. We'll break them all out. We'll look at all the equations to really break down how difficult it is to get all those combination factors and then forecast for that. So yeah, it is difficult. But don't lose hope. We'll get snow. Don't worry. Is there a chance this La Nina will persist into the following winter? I don't know yet, but it's possible. My preliminary thoughts on next winter is that we could be in a neutral Enso state or a La Nina state, but not an El Nino state. The 80s and even 90s, except for 93 and 96, sucked. Yeah, pretty much. The whole thing is that a lot of people are used to what happened in 2009 to 2015, 16, and they think that's the norm. Those years were blockbuster years. So those are not the norm. Are the really warm daily mins a function of El Nino, bad luck, or climate change? Three factors to the warm. This is a great question, by the way. Great job, Anthony, on YouTube. Okay, the low temperatures are a combination of three things. Okay, yes, El Nino. The other thing is partially climate change. Why? You have more moisture, higher heights, blah, blah, blah. You heard me talk about this. But the third thing is urban heat island effect. Now, I grew up in central New Jersey. I'm going to give you a little tale. When I grew up here, when I moved here in Freehold, New Jersey, no one else was here. All this was potato farms. We had a bull run around outside that we had to stay inside because the bull would get loose and the cops would try to chase it. It was great. I mean, I was 5. I was watching. It was exciting. My mom hated it because she was terrified. But this bull was running around the neighborhood, right? There's no bull here anymore. What we have in place now are a lot of roadways, a lot of highways, a lot of parking lots, a lot of commercial areas, more residential areas getting built on Route 9, a whole mall. There was no mall. It was a circle where everyone would get into a car accident. Now it's a mall. We have the racetrack, which was in place but wasn't as robust. We have tons of shopping centers now. We had none of that. That was back in 1984. Since then, we've built up dramatically. And the reason why that matters is because we replaced farmland with blacktop. We replaced corn with cement, and cement retains heat. So it's not only large-scale climate change. It's not only El Nino, but it's also the urban heat island effect because what we've built retains heat. Now, I'm not running around saying we should all live in tents. I'm just saying that is the factor, okay? So it's a trade-off. I personally I enjoy my house. I enjoy having heat and staying in a nice place and being able to order food and whatnot and, all that good stuff. So I'm not saying like, oh, boo technology, but I'm saying that is the influence of that, okay? Urban heat island effect with the growth of our population over the northern mid-Atlantic certainly enhances the retention of heat and keeps our low temperatures warmer. Let's see what we got here, back here. Let's see here. Remember that October 27, 2024 is the 70th anniversary for the first Godzilla. Oh, believe me, I know. Oh, I know.
Of course you know that.
I have plans.
Oh dear.
Well, I gotta be careful because that's right around the wedding anniversary. So I gotta be careful. But we'll see. We'll see if Toho has anything. Also, solar cycles have an impact as well. Yes, we're approaching a solar maximum right now. We haven't reached the solar minimum. That was back in the 2014s, around 2010, 2011. So the last time we really had a solar minimum was quite a while. It's an 11-year cycle. So we're reaching that peak and now we're going down. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of decades. Things could get interesting. Now, when we have solar activity, high solar activity, it allows for the stratosphere to remain colder than normal. But when we have less solar activity. It allows for ozone to build up in the stratosphere and allows for a warmer stratospheric environment overall, which also played into some of the intense high latitude blocking we saw back in around 2010, 2011. So you kind of get the idea. We'll see how that plays out in the next couple of decades. Any questions on X? All right, we'll check that. Outstanding questions tonight, guys.
Just a statement, really.
Uh-oh. Is it a good statement?
No, it's just somebody saying something, quoting something.
Let's see here. As Glenn Swartz said to me, you need all three phases of a storm. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's part of KU, Costa Mussolini. Okay? I strongly suggest getting that book because it details exactly all of the factors. And also, it has a great, let's see, in volume 2 under cases, it has a whole case study about the misses and why they were misses. And I think that's that really helps in understanding the factors of forecasting for these storms. Let's see here. Question. With all these Mid-Atlantic folks, well, I mean, this is a Mid-Atlantic feed, asking for snow, do you all ski, sled? Not sure why you want dirty snowbanks hanging around. Because snow's magical, sir. It used to cancel school. Now everyone just does, what is it, virtual learning or something, which I think is just, no. You're supposed to go out and build a snowman. But anyway, I digress. For some, it's a magical thing. It really is. I still get excited about it until I have to shovel it. But, there is that aspect to it. And for others, it's not so much like, oh, I want it. For some people, it's a business aspect too. Snowplow guys. I mean, I get a lot of those guys that, it's a business. So it's a factor of like this could be someone's livelihood of whether or not we get snow, which is why I'm very delicate. And I do not go around hyping up events 10, 15 days out, because what you're essentially doing is getting someone excited or needlessly preparing or getting someone prepared for a snow event that probably won't happen because of the model guys 15 days out. So what you're essentially doing, let me explain, because this is really important, why I do not do this, why I do not post GFS guidance beyond 300 hours or hell, even 120 hours. The reason why is because you're messing with people's businesses. Okay? You have a lot of snowplow guys out there, a lot of construction guys out there. They need to prepare and they need to have reliable data. And you have these jokers running around posting ridiculous nonsense that anyone who's a trained meteorologist should know better, that you shouldn't use things like the CFS to forecast a storm. You're messing with someone's ability to budget, to plan a business that impacts people's lives. I will not do that. Period. I'll tell you the truth. And the truth is that, yeah, pattern's favorable. I have no guarantees. Prepare and go about that route. And Card said a lot of contractors do landscaping, private constructors, etc. Also do snow plowing, clearing in the winter. Now having snow in the winter means that crews are not working. People aren't working. So I'm very delicate on that matter. In the winter forecast, sometimes people read what they want to read, if you know what I mean. They read into things because some people are claiming, oh, you're saying a blockbuster. I literally said, look, I'm not that impressed with the polar and Arctic air masses. We're going to have a lot of rain, snow, mixed storms. Water, guys, just water. And some people will read into it no matter what. But I can't control how people see things, how they read it. All I could do is explain what I'm thinking. And the one thing I never want to do is hype up an event to make it like as if it's going to be a blockbuster because you're messing with people's livelihoods, and I don't think that's cool. So I'm very, very careful on what I say and how I say it, and what I'm trying to explain. Let's see, we got. I know there's research that a ridge axis around Montana or Idaho supports a major East Coast snowstorm. Is there any support for the configuration showing up on the models? There is some hints of that, but I think that we're going to have to take that as a storm by storm basis and keep an eye. This is why I wait for 120 hours out, because then I get a better idea on the overall orientation of the troughs and ridges. But it's certainly going to be something I'm going to be watching out for. Let's see. Snow is magical. Who the heck loves heat waves? There are people who actually. I have literally look. See, as an Italian, I do not enjoy heat waves. I literally have, hot flashes already. I don't know. I'm like weird. I don't know, but I do not appreciate nor like hot weather. I prefer chilly weather because I'm already hot as it is.
We're prone to spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, exactly. So I would prefer cold weather. So, but there are people who prefer hot weather, and they could keep it, or as I say, go down to Florida then, and keep it there. Let's see here. I like this pattern remaining active until mid-March. See, this spring's going to kind of stink. And I'll say why. I'll give you kind of a preview on what I'm thinking with the spring. This spring's going to be a changing Ensno type scenario here. And with the polar vortex being disrupted in March, that means that at least the first half of spring is going to be raw and chilly and annoying. Which is why I'm not going to any baseball games. Not that I would go anyway, because I like watching at home with Gary, Keith, and Ron, rather than getting stuck behind some idiot in the stadium. But I digress. This spring is likely going to be one of those springs where, like, half the time it's raw and wet and just ugly and bleh. But we'll see how it plays out. I don't know, but we'll see. Let's see what else we got here. Heat and heat wave need La Nina to be east based to keep the southeast ridge from building too far inland and allowing cold fronts to get to our area. That's very true. The orientation of this La Nina is going to be key in determining the summer. We have to wait till we start to see La Nina actually form to see what the orientation is going to be. So we got some time to wait on that. March are they still playing spring training games down south? Yeah, they're playing spring training games, but I'm talking about the April games. I don't like this April. I don't like the way it's setting up. A lot of cool raw days, I think. I hope I'm wrong. I wouldn't mind being wrong about that. But based on what I'm seeing, it's kind of my idea of how the first half of spring is going to be. It's going to be one of those springs you're going to need a coat half the time. And then when it is sunny, it's going to feel like as if you haven't seen the sun in like 2 weeks. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong. I would like to be wrong about that. Just to put that out there. We do seem to be more of a rain-like pattern the past few years. Is there a reason for it? Well, part of the issue the past 3 years is because La Nina, where you had a storm track off to our west, so that led to more rainstorms. This year, with El Nino, yeah, we've had plenty of winter storm potential, but just the interaction hasn't worked out well. Canadian wildfires, no idea. But we'll be keeping an eye on it. God, I hope that we don't have the same setup we had last year. Probably not the same last year, just because we'll have a different ESNO state, so the winds are probably going to be coming from a different direction anyway. Well, congratulations on your son getting married. Don't know about the details in May. So we'll see.
It's too far out.
Too far out. But definitely congratulations. And let's see, I'll take one more question and then I'm going to wrap it up and get ready for some sleep. Because I deserve some sleep. I think. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see here. We got one more question. Let's see what we have out here. Nothing really significant. Anything on X, hun?
No.
All right. Well, then we'll wrap this up then. So, we're in the middle of a pattern change after a very pleasant period of weather. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it because things are going to get a little bit funky around here over the next couple of weeks heading into March. With that said, first storm that we're going to be dealing with next week, I really like interior based and then rain changes to snow on the coast. I don't like the idea of accumulation on the coastal plain right now. We'll see how fast that cold air builds in, and I'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll get better details on that by Saturday. In the meantime, if you're interested having a Super Bowl party, weather factors won't be an issue as the Chiefs win. Thank you very much. And yeah, well, you know, I'm not gonna. I mean, I literally have a Chiefs thing up.
Come on.
Yay! And we'll have our winter. We'll see how the winter storm set up, and we'll see how the pattern evolves over the next couple of weeks. Certainly favorable, but no guarantees. Not yet. So that's it for tonight. Have a wonderful night, and as always, stay safe out there.